Now, today we have two short suttas. They are interconnected with each other on how to deal with anger and some negative emotions. These are things we actually know in our daily lives, but we need constant reminding, because when we are faced with difficult emotions, we often forget what to do, or we get caught up with our memories, with our habits, and we do things which we normally would not do, and we're out of character, so to speak. And looking back, we wish we hadn't hadn't done it. In fact, later on in the second sutta, I'll be reading to you a bit of a kind of testimony by a monk on how he dealt with anger. This is in the second sutta. Now, the Sedaka Sutta is a sutta taught at a place named Sedaka. And the number is S47.19, Samyutta chapter 47.19. If you want to know more details about this, what it means, you only need to look at the top line, the very top line of the page. In this case, it'll be the next page. Sorry, I'll read it to you. In the next page, you will see in the traditional number, that is the number found in the Burmese edition, the Sinhalese edition, the Siamese edition, will be S5329. So here, it comes from the Samyutta Nikaya, the third collection, chapter 5, which is called Mahavagga, the great chapter, and part 3 of it, and which is called Satipatthana Samyutta. Samyutta collected sayings on Satipatthana Sutta 2 in the Nalanda Vagga. And in the Nalanda Vagga is Sutta 9. So that's how you get S5329. So this is the Burmese numbering style, okay? The traditional style. So let's look at this sutta itself. The translation is on page 145. Sedaka Sutta, the discourse at Sedaka S47.19. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling amongst the Sumbas. Okay, I think this is the first time we hear the name the Sumba. So this is a kind of a clan of people in northern India. They're not very well known in the suttas, but here you are. We have their names mentioned. And this place, this territory, there was a town of the Sumbas named Sedaka. Sedaka. All right. So from this kind of statement, we get the idea that the Buddha was kind of moving around northern India, the plains of northern India. It makes sense because it's easier to travel on a kind of flat country. And northern India, the central plains it's called the Gangetic Plain because it's formed by the river Ganges. So although the Buddha could have traveled by boat, he was never known to have ridden a boat or taken a ride in a horse cart. Definitely not riding a horse. No monks have been known to ride a horse. In fact, the monks walked all the way wherever they went, they would walk. So they kind of live very simple lives, and they're always available to the people. You can like go up to the monk anytime when you see them, except when they're eating, of course. And usually when they're on alms round, they wouldn't teach. But otherwise, if you see them, you would go up to them, and you can ask Dharma questions. Or sometimes the monks will come to you. This was in the Buddha's time. So we find here the Buddha living among the Sumbas outside the town of Sedaka. The Buddha usually wouldn't live in a house or some kind of hotel in town. It's going to be very noisy and crowded. He would normally live outside in the forest outside town, and then in the morning go into town, collect our food, and then come back. and eat it in the forest, or sometimes they might eat it in, take their alms food in town if it is quiet enough, and then go back to their residence in the forest. And things happen in between, of course. They might teach Dharma or give some instructions and so on. 2, then the Blessed One addressed the monks. So here, of course, imagine the monks are following him. Thus, Bhikshus, once in the past, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole and addressed his apprentice, Mettā Kathalika, thus, "Come, dear Mettā Kathalika, climb up the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders." Having replied, "Yes, teacher," the apprentice, Mettā Kathalika, climbed up to the bamboo pole and stood on the teacher's shoulders. The acrobat, that is the teacher, then said to the apprentice, Mettā Kathalika, "You guard me, dear Mettā Kathalika, and I'll guard you." So imagine you did this 2 acrobats. So the teacher tells the pupil, "Okay, you stand on my shoulders and I'll take care of you and you take care of me, so that we don't hurt ourselves, we don't fall." Thus, guarded by one another, protected by one another, we'll display our skills, collect the fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. Right, so we know there are people in the Buddhist time who entertain others by doing some special acts like doing this acrobatics. But there's something interesting here, something different. That's why the Buddha is telling us this story. 4, when this was said, the apprentice, Mettā Kathalika, replied, "That's not the way to do it, teacher. You guard yourself, teacher, and I'll guard myself." So here we have this student who is kind of like very wise. So he tells the teacher, "It's better if I were to take care of myself, right? I'm watching myself, how I stand and so on, and you do the same. We'll take care of ourselves." Thus, self-guarded and self-protected, we display our skills, collect the fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. That's the right way here. Right? So this is the lesson that the Buddha is telling the monks. The idea here is about taking care of ourselves. So here we see a very interesting presentation of the idea of self-reliance, taking care of yourself. But here again, we have to be very careful not to stop halfway and then forget about the rest of the suttas. The Buddha did not say, just take care of yourself, that's it, He didn't stop that. Notice here the apprentice actually speaks 2 sentences or 2 phrases. He says, "I'll take care of myself, you take care of yourself." So there are 2 parts that we have to remember, all right? Right, so the Buddha takes this as a point of diversion. He's going to use this point. He's going to talk about the Dhamma, and it is in 5. So the Blessed One, said the Blessed One, "It's just as the apprentice, Mettā Kathalika, said to the teacher, I'll guard myself." Bhikshus, thus, the focuses of mindfulness should be set up. Satipatthana should be practiced that way. When you practice satipatthana, you take care of yourself. How do you take care of yourself? You watch the body, first of all. That is just, in a sense, that is a self. You watch the body, and of course, you can't watch the whole body. It's got a lot of things. So you choose the breath, for example, or you choose your posture, you choose the walking, and so on. So that's the satipatthana on the breath, or we call it watching the breath, watching the body, which is part of watching the body. And as you go deeper in your meditation, you begin to notice there are feelings arising. I like this, I don't like that. And so you notice that you watch all this and you don't get caught up with them. You just watch them as they are, let them come, let them go. Right? So that's watching feelings. And then you notice there's the mind behind all these feelings. the thinking, like you watch the mind. But this may happen over time, not necessarily in the same sitting. It may happen at different times. Now, as you sit longer in this way, your mind becomes calm and still, and then dharmas, teachings, begin to arise in your mind. You begin to have inklings of impermanence, for example. You begin to have some insight into one of the noble truths, for example. So that's called a dhammanupassana, insight or watching the dhamma. So you just kind of, you watch that, you're aware of that. So you're doing this yourself, right? So in this sense, you're guarding yourself, right? So I'll guard myself, means I'll practice this satipatthana in my own, watching my own body or within myself. Then the Buddha goes on, I'll guard others, bhikshus. Thus should the focuses of mindfulness be set up, right? So notice the sentence here are the same, only the phrase, I'll guard myself, and the second one is, I'll guard others. And the Buddha says we guard others and we also practice satipatthana. So what does this mean? Because the interesting thing here is the sutta doesn't say it. So this is where the teachers are meant to use these suttas and then fill in the blanks, so to speak, talk about this part. Now here, of course, when you're doing satipatthana, you're watching the body, but sometimes in your daily life, not while you're meditating, but in your daily life, you see other people. And so you use your mindfulness and watch other people in the same way. You see the body, the breath or whatever, and you see that breathing in, breathing out in this other person also. You notice it's the same process as inside you. And so you connect in that way, right? And of course, it's a bit difficult to see feelings in others. It is mentioned in suttas, you can observe feelings in others, but it's possible, but it's not so easy. You have to be a very focused and kind of insightful person, but it's possible. And you watch the same thing in others. You do, or another simple way is you watch your feelings towards others, and you don't get caught up with it. That's another simple way. And of course, with that comes the thoughts behind all these feelings, and then as you watch this kind of process, some kind of realization, some kind of dharma will arise in your mind, some kind of teaching will arise. So in other words, in your daily life, when you are watching other people, you can also apply the satipatthana. You can apply mindfulness, in other words, sati, and this is called you're guarding others. In other words, you're not using others as a wrong object. Right? So this is one simple way of looking at how satipatthana is practiced. What is interesting here is the way the Buddha puts it. Notice the last line. It says, guarding others, bhikshus, thus should the focuses of mindfulness, guarding oneself, bhikshus, one guards others. Guarding others, one guards oneself. Okay, so this is the last line where you see both the ideas are combined. They go together. So when you do satipatthana, you are guarding yourself, you're also guarding others. Another way of putting it is you become more ready to practice moral virtue when you're mindful. So when you practice the precepts, moral virtue or the precepts, then you respect others. You don't hurt them, definitely not kill them. You don't steal, you don't commit sexual misconduct, you don't lie, and you don't get drunk. And keeping the precepts, you protect others. So that's another way of putting it. So here, notice this very interesting idea about meditation. It's not just about ourselves. Meditation is also about other people. So if you hear some people criticizing Buddhism and say, oh, meditation, you only do it for yourself. So that's not true. Because in meditation, we learn to calm ourselves, we learn to refine our emotions, we learn to brighten up our minds so that we are able to see goodness in others, but we're able to shine our goodness onto others. So in that sense, we connect with them, and this meditation also benefits them. And this is not just a one-off teaching, because the whole idea of the mind, of consciousness, is what, to use a modern term, we see all this by way of what I call we exist, or we live as connected minds. All our minds and consciousnesses are interconnected. This very Zoom network right now is a very good example. Every one of you here are interconnected. Your minds are interconnected. Of course, you may say, yeah, you're listening to me, so you're only connected to me. But then there are others. You may be aware of other people. You know there are other people. There is the potential of that connection also. Now you go a little deeper. If you look at human evolution, how did we grow? How did we become human? How did we become civilized? Because we notice this extended minds. Our minds are never alone. It's never atomic. They're always interconnected. We're always communicating with others. There's language, and there is kind of common action, communal action. Our minds learn to work together. It's when our minds learn to work together that we evolve as society. Even as individuals, we have to learn to work with others. So that is why the first Buddhist training is on moral virtue, on sila. This sila, keeping the precepts, is about recognizing this other minds, recognizing other people, and respecting them. That is what moral virtue is about. And when you have this respect, when you have this unconditional acceptance of others, then you are at peace with yourself. There is peace around you. You're able to meditate. And yes, you do that for yourself. But as you grow, you find this calmness and wisdom that grows in you in your meditation also benefits others, in other words. And then, of course, from moral virtue, from concentration, you get wisdom, which benefits everyone. Because if only you have wisdom just for yourself, it's not going to be very useful. Wisdom is how we use and share knowledge with others so that we all grow together as this network of extended minds. And I do talk quite a bit about this extended mind in volume 60.1F. This is last volume we are working on, which is now in the final stages of preparation to be published. So there you are. So you have here protecting the self, protecting others in the practice of satipatthana, mindfulness. Okay. Now here, the Buddha goes on a little bit more, 6. And how bhikshus does one? By guarding oneself, guard others. By attending to, cultivating, and developing it, that is the 4 focuses of mindfulness. It is in such a way that by guarding oneself, one guards others. So here, as I mentioned, so the practice of satipatthana, so here the Buddha summarizes and in a single line. The first thing is attending to, that's mindfulness. You direct your mind to the mind object. That's called attending to. And then cultivating, so kind of building it up, sustaining it, keep it going, and developing it, progressing further, to be even more focused. So this is, you build up your mindfulness in this way. 7, and how bhikshus does one, by guarding others, guard oneself. Now, here notice, very interesting how the Buddha puts it. By patience, non-violence, loving kindness, and caring. It is in such a way that by guarding others, one guards oneself. So notice, this is another way of putting of talking about the nature of the precepts. Patience. In other words, we see things happening that we have difficulty with in some way, and we kind of tolerate it. That is patience. Non-violence, not reacting in a way, although people show that they want to be harmful, we learn to be non-violent. And loving kindness, accepting others as they are. We have this very positive attitude. We'll talk more about meditation in the second sutta, how you use loving kindness to deal with anger, for example. We'll come to that in a while. And caring. This the Pali word is given to you at the bottom, and anudayatā, caring for others. Notice here, I mean, the Buddha is talking to the monks, and he's telling the monks, you got to be caring. So in other words, the monks to be watchful of others. How are the monks watchful of others? For example, after an alms round, when they have collected some food, they look at their bowl. If they have a lot of food and they're alone in the forest, and there's too much food, they're not able to finish it, and they do not eat after noon. So what they will do is they will divide the food up. They say, okay, I'm going to eat this much, all right? Or they just eat what they can. Now, the interesting thing, usually these forest monks, they will separate the food first. They'll say, okay, I only eat this much, right? They do not eat like the way we do. We just go on eating until we say, okay, I'm full, I'm going to stop, right? They do it, but at the start, they say, I'm going to take only this much, all right? And then the rest, they will put in a proper place in the forest where there are no plants, or some place where it is kind of safe in an ecological sense, and animals can eat it. So this is one way monks show their care to others, right? And later, when the monk is finished eating and he has to wash his bowl again, he has to be very careful to make sure that the food remnants do not go into water where there's life, because the grease or the oil might, kind of pollute the water. So he has to be very careful and wash it and pour the washing away in a place where there's no green, no living beings. So he has to be very careful, say, pour in between the rocks and so on, something like that, right? So in that sense, he cares for the environment. So there you are. You have this, the Buddha telling the monks, when you practice meditation, you got to be mindful in this way also by protecting others. So 8, I'll guard myself. Bhikshus, thus should the focuses of mindfulness be practiced. I'll guard others, bhikshus. Thus should the focuses of mindfulness be practiced. Guarding oneself, bhikshus, one guards others. Guarding others, one guards oneself. So here I say the sutta is quite simple, quite clear. The Buddha is not talking about actually how to meditate, but he's he's talking about how to meditate in a sense of not how it should be done technically, rather how should we meditate in such a way in connection with others, in society, in other words. How do we care for people in our meditation? So this is a kind of brief statement that the Buddha is saying, when you do even satipatthana, even mindfulness, you're not just mindful of yourself, you're also mindful of other people. That's a simple way of putting it. Now, there's some notes in the front. Let's see if there's anything we can glean from there. Nyanaponika has written something about this protection, on protection. So I'll just read it to you, since he's written it quite well. This is on the very front page. Now, you don't have to look at the notes. I just read to you. You can listen and take it as a kind of a verbal teaching. All right, so this is what Nyanaponika says in the first part. The title of his article is Protection Through Satipatthana. Protecting oneself, one protects others. The truth of this statement begins at a very simple and practical level. This first material level of the truth is so self-evident that we need say no more than a few words about it. It is obvious that the protection of our own health will go far in protecting the health of others in our environment, especially where contagious diseases are concerned. Okay, this is very clear. During COVID, you find we are acting in a very Buddhist way. There is social distance. We cover our mouths so that we don't spread the germs or whatever, and so on. And we don't shake hands. We put our palms together or knock our knuckles, right? So by being healthy is a personal responsibility, and you find there is a whole chapter on medicine in the Vinaya, right? And I suspect the monks, the ancient monks, do some kind of simple exercise, although it's not mentioned exactly what did they do. The suttas often mention the monks do a lot of walking, and then walking is a very important part of the monk's life, and that keep them active and healthy. And they know some basic self-medicating. They're taught how to have how to use cow's urine. And they bury this cow's urine in a kind of a file or bottle in the ground for a while, in a bowl underground for some time, and then it ferments, and they use that as medicine, as very simple medicine. So this idea of becoming healthy is very important, so important that traditional Indian medicine is said to have started with Buddhist medicine. Actually, even Ayurveda, of course, the Brahmins later on kind of changed things around and claim started with them. Actually, historians know all this. The roots of Ayurveda, the roots of traditional Indian medicine go back to the Buddha's time. Because the idea of health is important. The monks live in the forest, they're alone, very remote, and they need to be healthy because if they fall very sick, nobody will know. And of course, they are not supposed to be too dependent on lay people too. If they're sick, they have to depend on others. So these are some of the ideas why health is important, but this is the material aspect, right? So let me go on a bit more. Caution and circumspection in all our doings and movements will protect others from the harm that they may come to them through our carelessness and negligence. By careful driving vehicles, that is, abstention from alcohol, self-restraint in situation that might lead to violence, in all these and many other ways, we shall protect others by protecting ourselves. Like so here, of course, Nyanaponika is referring to the precepts. Right now, in the second paragraph, he says, we come now to the ethical level of that truth. Moral self-protection will safeguard others, individual and society against our own unrestrained passion and selfless impulses. If we permit the three roots of evil, greed, hate, delusion, to take firm hold in our hearts, then their outgrowth and spread far and wide will be like a jungle creeper, suffocating such a much healthy and noble growth all around. But if we permit ourselves against these three roots, if we protect ourselves against these three roots, our fellow beings too will be safe. So this is the kusala aspect, making sure that our actions are not rooted or greed, hatred, delusion do not make us act. We restrain ourselves when we notice there is greed, hate, or delusion behind the act, right? So in this way, they will be saved from our reckless greed for possession and power, from our unrestrained lust and sensuality, from our envy and jealousy, safe from the disruptive consequences of our hate and enmity, which may be destructive or even murderous, safe from outbursts of our anger and from the resulting atmosphere of antagonism and conflict, which may make life unbearable for them. And as to the third root of evil, delusion or ignorance, we know very well much harm may be done to others through the stupidity, thoughtlessness, prejudice, illusions, and delusions of a single person, right? Right, so I'll leave the rest for you to read. There's still another page to go. So here you can see the example how in early Buddhism, by restraining ourselves, we help others. By meditating, we help others. By our wisdom, we help others also. So there you are. You by now I'm sure you can accept the idea that meditation is not just something you do yourself by yourself, but it also is for the sake of others. All right. So okay, I'm going to stop here for a while. It's almost 9 o'clock, and about 5 minutes time we will come back for our conclusion of this study and go on to the next sutta. I'm going to go on to section 2.1 about King Pasenadi. Now, King Pasenadi was had a very great respect for the Buddha. He would often go to the Buddha, even have discussions with the Buddha, and sometimes he spends time reflecting. And there's even a section in the Samyutta about his musings and his discussions with the Buddha. So in the Atthanaṁ Sutta and S 3.5, you'll find one record of this kind of reflection. Now, attānaṁ is very interesting. Atta means self, rakkita protected. So, in other words, this sutta is about King Pasenadi's idea of self-protection. So, he tells the Buddha, sometimes he almost like has a friendly argument with the Buddha because he knew the Buddha since very young. They were both young. The Buddha was a young arahat and Pasenadi was a young king. So he tells the Buddha one day, he says, you know, I'm a king, I have to protect my people, my country. And I mean, religion, you would protect yourself. You can't protect the country, So I have a four-limb army, chaturanga, okay? Four-limb army. This four-limbed army or the army with four aspects: elephants, horses, chariots, and infantry. He says he uses this army to protect the country. Now, what's interesting here historically, there's four kinds of troops or warriors, if you like. It's the basis of the modern game of chess, by the way, right? So you have this, in Malay, it's called chatur. Chatur means, it comes from the Sanskrit word chaturanga, okay, the fourfold army. Anyway, so this king says, well, I have my army to protect. That's how we protect ourselves. So anyway, the Buddha, as the last say, says, yeah, that's very true. Okay, of course, the Buddha always tell the king, that's very true. You never tell the king is wrong. So he says, but there's always a gentle but. The Buddha tells the king, but it's only when you practice internally. For example, by keeping the 10 causes of wholesome actions, that the kusala kamapata, the wholesome actions of body, of speech, and of the mind, that you will gain true liberation. So the Buddha is always final say, and the king, of course, will have to agree. So here you see there is the protection of others, and there's also the protection of the self in this case. The protection of the self refers to self-awakening. Now we'll close this sutta with another acrobat. This acrobat is called Ugasena. And he's connected with a very famous verse in the Dhammapada 348. One day the Buddha was kind of walking along, and near the marketplace, there was this acrobat performing, and then the Buddha, this acrobat was precariously poised on the top of his bamboo pole. I couldn't remember whether he was standing on one foot or he was kind of standing on his head. But anyway, he was there high up on the bamboo pole in the air. So this way, the Buddha says these words, all right? And he says this words so that this Ugasena can also hear it. And I think Ugasena benefited from it, listening to what the Buddha is saying. You got to imagine yourself as Ugasena on the top of the pole, high up above the Buddha. I like to see him on his head. That'd be very dramatic. He was on his head, balancing himself with his arms spread out and so on. So here comes this gentle, resonant voice. He says, let go of the front, let go of the back, let go of the middle. All right, you have 3 lines here. Now, it makes sense to say let go of the front, let go of the back, but then how do you let go of the middle, right? So, well, the Buddha said it. So this is what's called intended language. He says something which kind of very clear to this acrobat. He says, wow, I never saw it that way. You know, he's right at the top of the pole, and he has let go of the front, he has let go of the back. There's still the middle, and he has still let go of the middle also. So what does it mean to him, right? So it appears to him as an amazing realization. And the Buddha continues, one who has crossed over the far shore of existence with mind released from everything shall not again meet birth and decay. It is very obvious here. The middle refers to samsara, to suffering, being caught up with suffering, right? The back is, of course, the past, memories, they come to us as memories. The front will be the future, things not yet come. And the middle is right here and now. So the Arahat has overcome all this. So this is where Ugasena reflects on letting go of everything. Right? This has no direct connection with self, protection or other protection, but it has this idea of how in our connection with others, we tend to see people in terms of time, right? And we see us, we forget that we're also in the middle of it all, right? So this is a kind of a very wonderful reflection on this teaching that this short sutta we have done. All right, now we'll go on to the second sutta, Aghata Pativinaya Sutta. All right, this is a new sutta. Okay, this is SD. This comes from volume 12, SD 12.23, sutta number 23. Aghata, it means resentment. Pativinaya Sutta 1. Now notice Pativinaya, you got the word Vinaya there. Vinaya means to remove, to get rid of. Pativinaya means kind of like to do it in a way to counter it. And this is the first sutta, but there means there's another sutta. So, and this is a short sutta about anger management. All right. So we see different methods being taught by the Buddha in meditation and so on. And do read up this introduction. You see a very interesting comparison with the Sedaka Sutta M20, for example, with the the 5 methods given here. You can compare this with the 5 methods given in the Pativinaya, Aghata Pativinaya Sutta. Now let's go straight into the sutta. I will later come back to the introduction to read this very interesting reflection by a monk called Tiradamo. We'll come back to that later. Let's look at the sutta first. Aghata Pativinaya Sutta 1, the first discourse on removing resentment. A 5.161. Now notice the sutta doesn't say removing anger. It says removing resentment. It is feeling against somebody, right? So it's a kind of a negative feeling. How do we remove this? Monks, there are these 5 ways of removing resentment, by means of which a monk would be able to remove all resentment that has arisen in him. What are the 5? When resentment arises in a person, loving kindness should be cultivated in that person. In this way, resentment would be removed in that person. All right, how do we do this? A very simple example. When we are angry, we try to remember some Buddhist teachings and we say, oh, I should not be angry. Angry is bad. Let me push away anger. Now, you find that's not always easy. You find somehow anger still lingers. Now, this is where the first thing is we should, if we have learned suttas, it helps us a bit here. We begin to understand that anger is a feeling. Anger is just a feeling, a negative feeling. That is why loving kindness is able to push it out. The way we use a peg to knock out another peg in the wood, okay, as mentioned in the Vitakkasaṇṭana Sutta. So here, by reflecting that the anger is just a feeling, it is easy to use loving kindness. What makes the anger complicated? What kind of allows the anger to fester, to grow, is we relate this negative feeling to another person. We say, I don't like this person. This person did this to me. This person did that to me. Now that is resentment. So when we start telling stories to ourselves, that's when the anger grows. And that's when we become violent and so on. And that's what we do not want. So this understanding a feeling as feeling is helpful by the use of loving kindness. Loving kindness here, how do we apply it to this anger within us? We first look at it and just say, okay, there is anger. We don't say I am angry. So the language is very important. We do not use I, me, mine. Okay, we just say there is anger. We note this presence of this anger. There is this negative anger. There is this dark spot. There is a bit of darkness in us. Now, if it is darkness, what do? We use the light of loving kindness. We shine this light of loving kindness on it. And we say, I accept this anger just as it is. It is not something good. I accept it, and I'm going to let it go. If you do not accept it, you cannot let it go. It's harder to let it go because you've not accepted it, then you let it grow. See, you either let it go or you let it grow. I mean, it is more sensible. It's better for us to let it go, isn't it? So loving kindness is just that. You unconditionally accept this anger as it is by telling yourself, this is anger. If you want to use I, you say, I do not want it. I'm letting it go. May you be well and happy, anger. You can even use this kind of talk, right? Loving kindness. and you let it go. A simple way is to smile, just as you do in your meditation. You'll be surprised. Next time you get angry, you try that. You smile, and you find that anger goes away quite easily, because anger and smiling are discordant. They don't go together. So when you smile, that angry thought goes away, because it's a thought. It's a nasty thought, nasty thoughts maybe. So here again is the application of loving kindness. Right, so this is an example, all right, which I will give here, and later when we look into Theravada's article, it will be a bit more, some more ideas. All right, so this is the first idea the Buddha gave. Second idea, when resentment arises in a person, compassion should be cultivated in that person. In this way, resentment would be removed in that person. Okay, now this looks quite familiar, right? We're talking about the 4 divine abodes. There is loving kindness, the second is compassion, all right? Compassion basically is loving kindness in action, all right? Now, when we talk about the 4 divine abodes of Brahma Viharas, actually there's only one real divine abode, that is loving kindness. And this loving kindness grows or is used in 3 different other ways, making 4 kinds of divine abodes. So when loving kindness is put into action, it's called compassion. Compassion should be cultivated in that person, in us, that is. In this way, resentment would be removed in that person, right? So when we cultivate compassion, we will remove the anger in us. So how do we do this? So let's say someone is angry with us, and we find out, we ask this person, what are you angry about, right? So when the person clarifies it, and rightly or wrongly, we're not sure, maybe the person said, well, you said something, and we couldn't remember, did we say it or not? So we don't want to go into details about that. So out of compassion, right? So, or another way of putting it is we give this person the benefit of the doubt. We tell this person, oh, okay, I'm sorry. If I said that, I'm very sorry. I don't want to hurt you. Something like that. So that is your compassion. Compassion means being kind to others even when they do not deserve it. Notice that. It's a very important definition here. If you start thinking, oh, this person doesn't deserve it, right, then you have no compassion. It's very difficult to have compassion once you think like that. So here, I mean, you could be right, the other person could be wrong. You didn't say anything wrong. The person simply thought it that way. It doesn't matter, all right? You do not have that pride. You say, all right, if I said it, I'm sorry, right? So you give the person the benefit of the doubt, and that is compassion. You give this person this kindness, even though he does not deserve it. Because you're creating some good karma, and this is going to come back to you later on. Right? But you're not doing it just because of this. You're doing it because it helps this person. It protects this person at this point here. Especially this person is your friend or someone, an acquaintance. All right. So this is a kind of a daily practice, if you like. Of course, life is very complicated. I'm sure you all will have questions and say, okay, what if someone did this, did that? What if they knock into my car or something? And so we have a lot of issues like that. But like I said, you understand the principle of compassion, and then you apply it as much as possible within your ability to do so. And there's a lot of learning in doing this. Okay, so this is the second way. Now notice in the third way, is very interesting. The third one, when resentment arises in the person, equanimity should be cultivated in that person. In this way, resentment would be removed in that person. Now, if you look at this, number 3, you say, oh, oops, there's something missing here, you say, right? Number 3 should be altruistic joy or gladness, right? Mudita. But mudita has been omitted here because it is not easy to use mudita to be joyful when you're angry with someone. It just doesn't arise in you. It's not that simple, right? So mudita has been omitted in this case. It's not practical. Instead, equanimity is used. In other words, this balanced mind, this calm mind. You take things, let it happen. When we say equanimity, we also mean we reflect on the idea that it's karma. Okay, we have our karma. Whatever a person does, he bears his karma. So you're not going to make things worse. Or you just let things be. That is equanimity. So this is one practical way of dealing with a resentful situation. So you have three choices here. You have loving kindness, compassion, equanimity. You choose which one is the best that works for you. And then you have number 4. When resentment arises in a person, that person should neither be mindful of it nor attend to it. All right? What does it mean? It's in simple language. Don't think too much about it. Just let it come, let it go. Right? So when you don't think about it, you don't talk about it, you won't get upset about it. That's one way. Because we don't need to get angry in this case. Of course, we all have all kinds of ways to justify something, but this is where if you do not want to get into too much of a mess, just do not be mindful of that. Do not direct your mind there. Don't attend to it. Just let that object go. It's not a wholesome object. That's the meaning here. You have a choice here, in other words. I know somebody's going to ask the question, what if later on, right? So my answer right now is you have the choice. You have the choice. If you want to take it up, fine. Then you have to face the next step. What's going to happen next? And you got to face that. Okay. And then the last one is very clear, number 5. When resentment arises in the person, that person should determine the ownership of karma in that person. Thus, this venerable one, okay, this venerable one is just a respectful term. This good man, as we often say in modern times, this venerable one or this good one is the owner of his karma, heir to karma, born in karma, bound by karma, has karma as his refuge. Whatever karma one does, good or evil, one is heir to it. So we are responsible for our action. In this way, resentment will be removed in that person. So this is the 5th method, right? Say, well, we all are responsible for our acts. All right. So this last one, of course, you should know enough Dhamma to be strong enough to use this idea. So these are the 5 ways. Monks, these are the 5 ways of removing resentment by means of which a monk, meaning a meditator or someone listening to this sutta right now, would be able to remove all resentment that have arisen in him. Okay, so this is the 5 ways of removing anger. All right, now let's look at this interesting write-up which a forest monk has written and which I thought was very useful to reflect on. And this monk was in Switzerland at one point, so he wrote it from there. So this, I'm going to read it. This in section 2 under anger management. In winter at the Dhammapala monastery in Switzerland, we have 3 months of monastic retreat. Okay, this is that Ajahn Tiradamo writing. Okay, it's a good time for practice, and usually it's a peaceful and quiet time. But about a month into the retreat this year, that's the year that he wrote this article many years ago, I had this little encounter with somebody. Afterwards, I was left with a discomfort. Maybe you call it anger. It wasn't somebody in a monastery. If it had been in a monastery, I would have talked to them and we could have worked it out. It was somebody in a chance encounter I had on a walk. And then they were gone. All right, so you got to picture this. He met somebody during a walk, and the person could have said something or done something, and he was very upset about it. I could not even chase after them or sort it out. So there I was in the middle of a monastic retreat, no distraction, and there was this thing, right? So this is a sort of thing that tends to be clearer when you're in a retreat because you don't think about anything else, but this thing happened. I called it anger as a way to deal with it. Okay, notice how he phrases it. He calls it anger so that he can deal with it. He accepts it as it is. And this anger just wouldn't go away. I found it troublesome in a peaceful monastic setting to have this anger nagging at me. I finally gave him. I realized this is a good chance to learn, right? So he was not very successful, although he said, okay, I accept this anger. All right. I began to contemplate this irritation, to examine what was going on. It was an unpleasant physical sensation around my heart. So he's a very careful monk, as he could feel this negative emotion. As I looked at it, this anger, inverted commas, anger, suddenly turned out to be something else, resentment, right? It surprised me because the person I was resenting wasn't even there. So he realized this. He begins to learn more and more about the situation, resentment towards someone, anger towards someone. But this person is no more there. It was just a memory, imagination. So I contemplated this resentment for the next 2 or 3 days. I found it was resentment at being misunderstood. It went back at something that happened decades ago, right? So here it's connected with something else, a memory in the past. I began to look at it, to be open to it, to receive it non-judgmentally. As I did so, it began to unravel. It looked almost like it was unpacking itself. What had I thought was anger, what I had thought as anger turned out to be a complex mechanism. It turned out to be a series of things. Of course, he's using his mindfulness to deal with it, so he begins to see its development. Okay. After resentment, fear came up. Right. So this is another emotion he noticed: fear. Fear of letting this resentment out, of it exploding, and fearing what the other person would do if I let it out. The fear lasted 3 or 4 days. Below fear was frustration. I spent 3 or 4 days with that one. Each day was an unraveling of this feeling I had called anger. It began to unravel in an almost mechanical way. As if unravel, it opened up. As it opened up, it got more scary because it didn't have a shape anymore. It became more nebulous. Nebulous, I mean shapeless, like a dark object, like gas in the sky. It became bigger. It became bigger than me. It became bigger than me. But as it unraveled, it became less solid and more spacious. And there was more flexibility with it. When it reached frustration, it seemed less personal. It seemed more universal. Right? So he's sharing his very special experience of this. He's beginning to see how this anger grows and is becoming something else. This unraveling went on for a few weeks. Then one day I noticed it was just this colorless energy. It had neither color nor texture nor emotion. Notice, no color, no texture, no emotion. I couldn't say it was either resentment or frustration. It was just this pulsating energy, a colorless energy. Though it wasn't pleasant, I could see this was not me. And there was fear with that. So now he's able to disengage himself from this anger, but he feels uneasy about it, right? At least with anger, I could say, well, okay, that's me. You have something to like point out to. But here, something's bad, but you can't even know whose it is. But as it got more and more unpacked, it got down to sort of an archetypal level. Okay, so archetypal level, that means it got to a very deep psychological level. It was a basic fundamental emotion. Then there was just this energy there pulsating, a powerful energy without color or direction. I couldn't say it was mine. It was only, I could only say it was life force. So now this is his experience. He thinks, oh, this is part of me. This is my living experience, life force. This was a revelation to me to find that anger is part of our being. So he sees this anger actually is a part of him. It is an expression of life force, of being alive, in other words. Of course, it has been polluted by negative influences. In this case, by my own stuff, my frustration and resentment and fear. But at its source, it is just the life force. This was frightening to discover because I had no control over it. With anger, I had a certain degree of control. I could keep my mouth shut or let it out. But this stuff, what is it? Right? So in other words, he begins to see, wow, this is really a deep part of me. It is important, therefore, that we work with anger, not against it, because it is part of our life force. And if we try to work against it, it's like trying to kill ourselves. This is what many people do. They try to strangle their anger. They try to stop it. And then they get depressed and resentful and frustrated because they are stopping their life force. To work with anger doesn't mean to let it out, but to work with it, to be able to tune it in at a level where it's at this life force level. Once we see in a different way, it has a different meaning for us. So here, in other words, he's saying, once you begin to see this anger actually is a natural part of you, you begin to know how to deal with it, in other words. You don't get angry with it anymore. You begin to see the various reactions you have and so on. All right? There's just a couple more paragraphs. So I realized that when I thought it was simply anger, certain scolding thoughts arose in me. Oh, you shouldn't be angry. 30 years of meditation and you're still angry. But when it became this energy, a pulsating energy, then all these voices stopped because there was no history with it. In other words, you take this anger simply as the nature of things. No one is to be blamed. It is just there like that. There was no history, no coloration, and no personal investment in it because it's just a natural life force. Anger is just a nature of human life, in other words. So it's not to be blamed. That's surely what the Buddha was telling us, not to take the things we are aware of as an expression of ourselves, but to be aware of what their real implications are, what is their real depth. Many times we're just looking at the surface. We aren't really seeing what the source is. If we cultivate mindfulness, awareness, it can begin to penetrate through. It can unpack emotion like anger. Anger is not something to be throttled and strangled, but something to be explored and open to and discovered. It is to be transformed into something which is enlightened. Practice is about enlightening this quality, not about pushing it away or trying to strangle it or ignore it. Anger is telling us something about ourselves, whether we want to hear it or not. we should remember the teaching of Ajahn Chah that all things are teaching us. And remember that the things we don't like are probably the things that are teaching us most of all. Right? Those things we don't like actually are teaching us most of all. Okay, there you are. Wonderful insight from a practicing monk. And that ends our sutta. All right, so we have 20 minutes now for questions.
Thank you, Piya. Now we have our Q&A. Sister Aisin, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sister Ratna. Thank you, Brother Piya, for the teaching.
Okay.
Let me read out the first question from Sister Huilin.
Okay.
From Sedaka Sutta, anudayatā.
Yes.
From the comment footnote 13 means caring. The Pali words anu here, does it means repeatedly?
Well, yeah, anu is a prefix that has a sense of to repeat. It also can mean like it's very near to you. So it's something you do with mindfulness with your own self. All right, so it's something like self-effort. Okay, yeah, but there's a sense of repetitiveness. So to care for someone, you repeat that action. You keep looking at someone, you question someone, you act in a compassionate way to someone, and there is this recurrence, this again and again, and so you care for someone. Yeah. Okay, so that's Pali words tend to be quite descriptive in that sense. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Piya. The second question from Sister Huilin, from the Aghata Sutta, the fourth way mentioned as when resentment arises in a person, that person should neither be mindful of it nor attend to it. When we are not mindful, then we are not practicing satipatthana.
No,
Maybe this fourth way need to be translated differently. What do you think, Brother Piya?
Okay. No, I find that I cannot translate something the way I want it. I have to look at the sentence, the grammar, the language, and the context. Here, yeah, it's very interesting. You know, I mean, we normally don't hear that kind of language. Do not direct your mindfulness there. The question is, there is right mindfulness and there's wrong mindfulness. Okay. So here, when we direct our mindfulness something negative, it's going to be negative, right? So unless we adjust our mind in such a way it's positive and then we're able to change the situation, which is negative, then we can direct the mindfulness. So in this case, if we look at something negative, then we're going to become negative. We don't want that. That's the meaning. Okay. So in this sense, sati is neutral, you can say, right? Remember, these are words, and words are how we use them. In this case, in this context especially. And if you read the sutta, that sentence properly, what is meant is we don't direct our mind to it and then keep the mind there, and then it's going to be very negative because we are doing it in the wrong way. So we should turn the mind away from it. And that is right mindfulness, by turning the mind away from something negative. Okay. So I wouldn't say it's grammatically wrong or wrong in terms of words, lexical way. And so I hope the explanation is clear enough for you. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Piya. There's no more question in the chat box.
All right.
Any brother and sister would like to ask question? You can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Well, the year is ending. It's already December, the final month of the year. It's amazing, right? So it's going to be our third year very soon of Sutta studies. To me, the Sutta study is not just studies, it's an amazing gathering of people from all over. You who are my friends, it's really nice to see you, to chat with you all. And I hope you all there's a chance to communicate with each other, that'd be great. Yeah? Okay, any questions? You can ask general questions about.
Yeah, Brother Pia, another question. The next question from Max Johnson.
Okay.
In Aghata Pativinaya Sutta, do you see these 5 as practices to try sequentially by trying the first in the list and the second next and so on? Or is it not intended in this way?
Okay, my first impulse would be to say that you don't have to follow it sequentially, which means you can if you want to, right? In a normal situation, I'm sure we will naturally act in a way we'll find the best 2 of the 5, the best 2 that we use. For example, in some cases, we'll just be equanimous. We'll just keep calm. We're not going to answer anything because we know whatever we say is going to inflame, going to make this person more angry. So we're going to use equanimity. But remember, when I say equanimity, it's not just equanimity by itself. There's no such thing. There is also compassion. Because by being equanimous, you are also being compassionate to this person. And by being compassionate to that person, you also know what loving kindness is. So you can see the depths, the various layers of goodness when you act on this, right? So I would therefore say either way, you can go sequentially. In some cases, you may need to go sequentially, but I think in most cases, things happen. You have to act while standing, so to speak. You have to decide which one you want to use. Okay, maybe you are in a very reflective mood one day, and then you just think about it, say, wow, all these people doing all these nasty things. Do they know they have their karma, right? For example. Again, even in saying this, if you're calm and mindful, you find the other 4 are also there at some level. Okay. However, when you do practice the 4 divine abodes, Brahma Viharas, you have to start with loving kindness. In that case, you have to start with loving kindness. But in practice, when dealing with this kind of situation, this resentful situation, this anger situation, you use the best tool available to you at that time. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Pia.
Okay.
The next following question from Sister Huilin.
Okay.
The 5 ways that mentioned in the Sedaka Sutta, is it limited to during meditation? Or can we also practice that 5 ways in the Sedaka Sutta during our daily life as well? Am I right?
Oh, yes, I would agree with that. Of course, the context of the sutta, these 5 teachings were given in the context of meditation. All right. So historically, we need to recognize that, and we should remember that. And when we do teach, we mention that, right? On the other hand, whatever is taught in meditation also applies in daily life. They're really wonderful things to learn. You find in modern psychology, that's what they're doing. They're kind of taking all these wonderful teachings and they're using it in other contexts, right? So remember the background, the historical background of the sutta, because that's how you explain the sutta, that's how you remember the sutta, that's how you preserve the teaching. But in practice, you can use it as you need it. Okay. Now, if some of you have, this is another point. Okay, relating to the Vitakkasadana Sutta, the 5 points. If you look at the previous notes, older than what is posted today, you find the last 2 lines are kind of reverse. So here you find in the old notes, number 4 is determining ownership of karma, and I mentioned it as disregarding resentment as sheer determination, and then determining ownership of karma as stealing thought formations, identifying the causes. Then looking at it, I realized when we determine ownership of karma, that is the fifth of the Aghata Vinaya, when we determine karma, it actually refers to the fourth of the Vitakka Santana methods. That is, we identify the causes. This is stealing what I call the thought formation, sankharas, calming the thoughts. We calm the thoughts by asking ourselves, what is going on here? Why am I thinking like this? So when we question like that, we are also accepting this act for ourselves. So it's more connected with ownership of karma. And then disregarding the resentment, in other words, doing nothing here, is close to sheer determination, which is the fifth of the Vitakka Santana methods. These are just comparisons, okay? I mean, you can rearrange it yourself if you like. Important thing is how you see it, and in terms of practice, whether it works for you or not. So this is something that I've thought about, and I've slightly reversed the last two in the latest notes, just to inform you. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya. There's no more question in the chat box at the moment.
All right. Time is flying. We've got 10 more minutes. Well, for us in Singapore, the weather remains almost the same. It's a bit rainy now, but it rains almost any day, anytime. But in the north, I think you're getting cold. The weather's getting cold and snow is coming. So there you see changes again. Some of you like the cold, some of you like the warmth. Here, I like the sunny weather, not too warm. Because sunny weather, we can go out for walks and exercise, and it's really wonderful to do. We have been going out to the community centers and doing exercises with the old folks. It's really fun to be with them and see how they behave. And we're doing some Chinese exercises, and just to be active, as we age, be healthy in body and mind. Well, 5 more minutes to go. Any questions? Well, now that we have finished the SC60 series, the translation work has gone back to translating suttas. So once again, if others of you who have not done proofreading, if you like to read the suttas, they're usually quite short, You can just contact me or Ratna, and we will send you a short sutta. I mean, a sutta. Some are short, some are slightly longer. They're normally like this sutta is only 4 or 5 pages. Some can be 20 pages. You can always choose if you want shorter ones, so just let us know. And it's a great way of learning. As you proofread, you also read the suttas. It's a way of like ongoing studying, So and there I am sending you suttas week by week. Of course, you can start proofread at your own rate if you need to. Sometimes you may take a bit more time. It doesn't matter to me. Important thing is just keep it going. So if you want to volunteer as proofreaders, please contact us on Telegram. Yeah, Telegram is the easiest because I can just drop the file there and you get it. Okay, Ratna, family photo. All right, let me just summarize by way of closing reflection. Now, today we have looked at two suttas and some testimonies by the monks themselves on how to overcome negative emotions, especially anger. The key idea here, if you recall, is to accept this emotion as it is so that we can let go of it. It's like something within us that we free, like, we free this bird which is caught in the branches. And then there is this other monk, Tiradhammo, who says that if you observe all these emotions carefully, you find it's all a very natural part of our lives. It's not something we do to hurt anyone. We can't help it. It happens. So we show compassion to others because we know, like others, sometimes we too can't help ourselves. And this is a very beautiful way of accepting others. Of course, there are situations which are not that simple. I read a rather troubling commentary by a psychologist who writes almost every week in the papers. And today he wrote something about, this war going on with Israel and Hamas. He says it's very difficult for him to accept all this violence and ongoing killing and so many people dying. And he wonders that people can be really happy because he says as a psychologist, he deals with people individually. He wants to help people. And he wants to tell people it's okay, no matter what troubles you go through, you will survive, you will somehow learn something, you will be happy. He says now he can't do that. Now he finds it so difficult. He says now people actually suffer, and suffering is not a good thing. And when I read it, I said, yeah, this is very true. I can connect with this. But then again, I says, yeah, it can be very difficult when you're suffering, when we are at the center of this suffering. Imagine if you're one of those people, whether you are the victim or whoever caught in that war over there, it's very difficult for us. So I have no solution for this. I have no nice things to say, but give it a thought and maybe something in your mind through your understanding of the Dhamma may arise and you feel, okay, this is what I should do for myself, for others. And that way you can deal with this very powerful challenge called suffering. So reflecting in that way, we have this wisdom given by the Buddha to us, which we can use. So use that wisdom and you find you connect with people more meaningfully, more happily, and that way the answers are clearer to us. So with that reflection, let us send out our loving kindness to our loved ones, that they may be well and happy. And we want them to be well and happy. And of course, may you tell yourself, may I be well and happy for yourself also, so that you're able to continue your study, learning, and growing in the Dhamma. And finally, we close with our recollecting three important things in our lives: the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bow down. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Bow down. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.